Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Oh, hello. When did you get here? You ever see that? You ever see people do that? Like, I don't know what the heck they do it on TV shows or something, or like every once in a while, a certain scenario where these people hop on and they pretend that they didn't know they were being filmed or something. So I spontaneously just did my version of that. I hope you enjoyed it. And here we are. Here we are. Please say hi. Mention your comments, concerns, questions. Jennifer from Dallas, Texas. I think that's the only Dallas there is, right? It's the famous one. I gotta go visit Texas sometime. I think I'm gonna have to just go back to the U.S. and just kind of hit a bunch of places, like maybe just take a few months and just travel a country or something. That'd be fun. I've always wanted to do that. Yeah, I have a good high school friend in Texas too, who I would love to see. So I would love to get people out here to the Dominican Republic to visit me. You guys get your booties over here. Let me know if you need some help. But yes, there's so many beautiful places in the United States. And all I did was go up and down the East Coast. I never traveled it, which, it was just how my life went. So be it. But yeah, there's so much beauty there, that the Grand Canyon, like I would love to see. Arizona, I think I would love. Texas sounds like such a unique and cool place for so many reasons. Its expansiveness and all the different things it offers. It's just, there's an amazing country, the U.S., and I certainly didn't take advantage of it when I was there. And really, to be honest with you, up and down the East Coast, let's be fair here. I spent some time in Maine, New Hampshire, a little in Vermont, grew up in Massachusetts, spent 14 years in Rhode Island. A total of, 12 or 13 or something, maybe more in Florida. But anything in between there, I didn't, I drove through it. I didn't really experience it, which is something I'm noticing at this stage of my life. It's not just about, driving through some place. It's actually experiencing it. It's that's what was such a big deal for me coming over to the Dominican Republic. Is I didn't go to a resort. I didn't have any intention of going to a resort. I came over here specifically to experience the culture and actually learn about the country, just experience it to some degree. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with it. But yeah. Oh, you love the DR. Have you been over here, Jen? And you're originally from Arizona. Wow. Yeah. I got to get my booty over there at some point. I don't know. I think I'm not sure when it'll be. We'll see how the next couple of years plays out. Susan, come over to Australia. Jen came over several times, stayed on resorts. The resorts here are absolutely phenomenal from what I've heard, from good friends that have visited, and lots of people around here. The resorts are absolutely phenomenal. That's just not my thing, you know. I don't know. It's just not my thing. There's so much beauty and so many other things to do. But Australia, I almost went. Actually, I got my passport because I had never traveled out of the country until I came to the DR. But when I got my passport, it was originally to go to Australia. That was my intention. I was working on a kind of like a corporate life coaching business with this great company over there, and yeah, I was planning on going over there. That's why I originally got my passport. So, but hey, Sarah, thanks for joining. Buddy, would love to buy a big RV and travel the country. One of my goals. Yeah. That was one of my goals before I came over here. I always thought, I always tossed that around and thought it'd be fun. And then, now, now everything has just a little bit of a difference to it because of, whenever you travel, it doesn't matter if it's the United States or internationally, but of course, the further you travel, I think the larger the impact. So when I because just moving from Massachusetts to Florida in my 20s had a huge impact on my brain and the way I thought and the way I viewed things, because there are differences everywhere. About how people live and interact. So it expands your mind. When I came over to DR, it's just like, a huge expansion. So I think internationally is more profound. However, just doing in the United States, traveling is huge. So now when I think about, it's funny because, I'm you would think I'd be less likely to travel the United States now that I live in the DR. And I don't have much, I'll go back and visit family and stuff. But other than that, I don't have any specific intention on going back. So you think it'd be less likely for me to travel the United States now. However, because of the expansion I've experienced, following my dreams and just picking up and moving to the Dominican, it's probably more likely that I would go back, just plan it, go back over there for a few months or whatever, 6 months, who knows, and travel the US. We may have stumbled across something, people. Who knows? Maybe I'll do like a US tour. That'd be fun. And I'll have like some speaking engagements along the way or something. You never know. Hey, Lisa. All right, so let's dive into this thing. Enough with we'll do, maybe I should do a whole show on expansion, mind expansion and travel and all that stuff. But I'm going to dive into the topic. Yeah, Buddy can drive me in his RV. Yes, absolutely. All right. Okay, now you guys are starting to freak me out, Jennifer and Buddy, because what I've always said, I swear I have always said this. You can ask my friends in Florida and probably other people that I've said it to. Whenever I've talked about this, I've always said that I never want to drive. I'm not driving. Like if I drove way too much in my lifetime. I've been single most of my life. I was a single parent, which ups your driving dramatically. My son played on all kinds of soccer teams, which ups your driving dramatically. Like I've driven so much in my life. I have no interest in driving. So I have always said, whenever we talked about, going to sites or traveling the US, I have always said, yes, let's do it. And I'm not driving. I don't care, man. I will set up plexiglass in between the driver if he wants his privacy. And I'm just going to go chill in the back and play cards and talk and listen to music and watch movies. And of course, look out the window. Those are just other things too. But yeah, that's funny you guys said that, because that's always been my dream. In an RV with a bathroom, all the comforts, just go have a blast and not worry about driving, you know? Oh, now maybe I'll do like a tour. Maybe I can have people come with me and we'll talk about spirituality all along the way. The possibilities are endless. Yes, Sarah's a huge traveler, so yeah, she loves to talk. All right, let's dive in. So what I'm talking about is effective self-talk. Now, there is sign you up, Jen. Yeah, and I hope everybody knows, we have 4 cabanas built right here on our property, and we're going to be doing some awesome spiritual retreats here soon. Not only myself, but my neighbors. So we're going to be doing some spiritual retreats here soon. They're built, but we have to get them furnished and stove, refrigerator, whatever, that type of stuff we still need to work on. So yeah, keep that in mind, because the retreat's going to be happening soon. Oh, Buddy lost volume. Can you guys hear me? It's possible it's on Buddy's end. That happened with somebody else one other time. So can you guys just let me know if you can hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. I can hear you. Might be you, Buddy. All right. So self-talk, like, when I first kind of titled it self-talk, I was thinking, well, I was thinking about what I'm going to talk about. But when I said the term self-talk, I started thinking like, well, that kind of sounds like it's the way I talk to myself, as far as like, no, I'm a good person, or, not judging myself harshly, that type of stuff. So that is not what this conversation is going to be about. That's why I tried to get a little bit more specific with the description. It's going to be more along the lines of how do you motivate yourself, gain clarity, reframe negative thinking, get yourself off the pity pot. It's those types of things that I'm going to talk about, because I have these conversations with clients regularly. And when I see patterns, last week I worked with a lot of clients, and I see patterns about what I'm talking about. And a lot of times that's how I come up with the topics for podcasts. And this has been a recurring theme probably for the last year, I would say. It's the self-talk is getting more and more. I think it's because we have to start depending on ourselves. And I think we're naturally leaning in that direction. So, it's wonderful that you listen to podcasts and watch podcasts and get this information to help you. But at the end of the day, your life is your responsibility. It's all about implementation. It's all about integrating these teachings into your life. It's not about listening to them, feeling good, and then going and bumping into walls through your everyday life. I mean, we're not going to do it perfect. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is, we got to lift the bar up here. Lift the bar up, hold yourself to higher standards as far as how you're living. If you're not progressing consistently, you should be. So if you're not, you probably need to integrate more. You probably need to implement the teachings more instead of taking in more knowledge. If you're consistently taking in more knowledge and your life isn't getting better, somewhat dramatically, you're not implementing enough, right? So this is part of the implementation process, as far as just taking the teachings and implementing it. But it's also part of the implementation process in a way where we need to monitor ourselves. We need to be able to work through things kind of on the fly as we go through life. So like, I talk to myself very specifically, and I don't know where it came from, to be honest with you. I don't know how I got good at it. Maybe, I'm sure it was divinely guided, but I got good at self-talk, and I've had several teachers and people who knew their stuff tell me that I was very good at my self-talk. And the way that I'm explaining it to a lot of my clients, they seem to get something out of it too. So you have to develop your own method of self-talk that works for you. And I think that mine, as you'll hear, my self-talk is very kind of harsh. I mean, you guys know, man, I don't like to waste time. I don't like to babble about stuff that's surfacey. Like it just doesn't, I have no patience for it because it doesn't mean anything. It's just, to me, it's a waste of time. Talking about surfacey stuff or beating around the bush, to me, is like, I don't even know. I can't, well, like it reminds me of like busy work back like when I was in school, you know, like you're like in 10th grade and they're like, okay, write up. I don't know if they actually did this, but I'm trying to think of an example, write out the multiplication tables to keep yourself busy. I was like, no, you can send me to the office. And they're like, Glenn, you just need to do something to keep yourself busy. I'm like, no, I'm not doing something just to keep myself busy. It's just, I'm not, and that's kind of what it is. There's no point in and I'm very much in that direction. I think this is why there's a lot of substance in my teaching, because if I have a session with somebody or a group, like I'm constantly trying to hit the point, like get to the part that's going to help. Let's get there. So that's I'm very down to the core. That's my personality. That's way my personality. That's not a little my personality. That's not like, I'm an extremist. So I'm extreme with that. Way more than most people I know. So I think my self-talk somewhat reflects that. And I think my self-talk also is reflective of my blue-collar town, Massachusetts upbringing. I mean, we swore constantly. It was an art form. It still is. So, I mean, I try to pull back sometimes with my swearing. Sometimes I go with it, whatever. I kind of go in and out. I get into patterns. If I'm swearing too much for a while, I'm like, okay, Glenn, you sound like a drunken sailor, lighten up a little, and I pull back, and then I pull back for a while. And then a lot of times I don't swear too much. And then it's like, then I'll throw a couple in for, which is for effect, which is nice too. And then sometimes I end up swearing too much again, and then I catch myself, but whatever. This is my personality, and it's reflective in my self-talk. So I'm going to give you guys some examples. And to be honest with you, I think, and I would love to hear some feedback on this, I think that most people are going to find the way that I talk to myself more beneficial than not. Even if they're, they didn't grow up in a blue collar town, even if they're not an extremist, I think that this way of talking is fairly effective. Maybe you can tone it down a little bit to so you don't scare yourself. But I do think it's very effective because it gets to the point, man. And that is where the rubber meets the road. And this is the whole point of self-talk. So if you're on the pity pot, like it's, you got to be able to, a lot of stuff comes down to a final question, right? So that is what I mean by getting to the point. It comes down to a final question. And many times that final question is, do I want to live spiritually or do I not? That's what most of this stuff comes down to. Because let me see that thing that how do you motivate yourself? You get to that. How do you gain clarity? You get to that. How do you get yourself off the pity pot? You get to that. Sometimes even reframing negative thinking, you get to that and then work off of it. So, so a lot of this stuff comes down to, we live in a world of yin and yang. There's always two options. I've said that many times is, nothing is good or bad. It's just our thinking makes it one or the other. Every COVID is not a problem and it's not an opportunity. It's what you decide to make it. If you make it an opportunity to change your life into a better version, then that's what it will be. And many people have done that. If you use it as a problem to drag you down and go onto the pity pot, that's what it will be. And many people have done that. So it's not, this is the world of yin and yang. So when it really comes down to it, just most situations in our lives, it's the choice is, how do you want to live? And you have one or two options, spiritually or not. Do you want to live love-based or fear-based? It's either or. It's there is no door C. There's no option number 3. It's just one or the other. When you really get down to it, things are one or the other. You either do it or you don't. So, this is how I talk to myself. And I'm so harsh that I view it like, the the old-fashioned upbringing, like we're going to go to the tool shed or the wood shed and only one of us is coming back. Yeah, that's how I view it. I'm going to take myself to the woodshed and one of us is coming back. Because right now I'm divided. And that's where my confusion is. That's why I'm stagnant. So we're going and one's coming back. And that's what's going to happen, So when I start my self-talk, and I'll try to refrain from the swearing, I usually do on my podcast. Just so this can air many places and more people can hear the message. If I'm talking to myself about something, it's really gets down to the point. Like I remember one conversation I had with myself, there was times when I was going to family court all the time. And it was like, I felt like a victim because, I was trying to live spiritually and not lie and not manipulate and do the right thing. And sometimes I went to court and got ripped a new one by the judge because I didn't have a lawyer, or there was a lot of negative experiences in family court. And, the other side was doing things that I viewed as negative and then would come out winning sometimes. And it's tough when it looks like you're doing the right thing. This is the crux of it. So it doesn't matter if it was family court or what, but I felt like I was doing the right thing. I felt I was being honest. I felt like I was being loving. I felt like, I was doing the right thing. And yeah, I would go to court and get my ass handed to me. And, like it was tough. And there was times where I got frustrated. And there was times when I'm going like, why do I even bother? Why? What? Like, other people live their lives by, cheating, stealing, and lying. And here I am doing the right thing. And I'm getting the short end of the stick. And, so therefore feeling sorry for myself. hopping on the pity pot, feeling like a victim. These are all, that is, that sums up like probably 3/4 of the problems in the world, in our lives. I mean, in our individual lives. If we have problems, 3/4 of the time we're feeling like a victim and we're hopping on the pity pot. I mean, otherwise, like, I mean, when is your life going horribly and you need to change something when you're not feeling like a victim? Like, I'm not even sure there's an example. This might be 100% of the time. I don't know. Because if you're not feeling like a victim, you're not on the pity pot, then you're doing the right things. You're probably in a place of acceptance and you probably aren't suffering, right? So most of the time we're suffering, we are on the pity pot. We are in victim mode, which is actually, that's kind of important. I'm going to say that again. I want that to soak in. If you are suffering, it's struggling in your life, most likely you are in the victim mentality. The reason I'm saying that again is because victim mentality has gotten really popular over the past 10, 15, 20 years or so. Most people know what the victim mentality is. Most people know that it's not a good thing to be. Most people do it anyway, but then say they're not in the victim mode. Right? There's many times when I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, well, you got to get out of the victim mode now. Like, I'm not in the victim mode. Like, yeah, you are. Of course you are. Yeah, you are in the victim mode. That's why you're so upset. Like, how can you be this upset if you're not feeling like a victim of something or somebody? Look, what you this upset at yourself? Even then, you're in victim mode. You feel like you're a victim of yourself. Like, I mean, so we gotta, like everything else, slow down, relax. Just because you're in the victim mentality doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're lost or you're confused or there's something wrong with you. We all do it. I still fall into victim mentality sometimes. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a term. We just need to get out of it. That's the important thing. People like, oh, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. Yeah, you are. Like, you don't have to defend yourself against being called a victim if you're in the victim mentality. That's the first thing that people do is try to defend themselves. So relax. We all fall into the victim mentality. So if you're a victim, then in the victim mentality, and I go take myself to the woodshed, and I go, okay, what's the problem, Glenn? Well, they did this and they're, and it looks like they're winning. And here I am taking the high road all the time for all these years. And nobody appreciates me and nobody sees that I'm, doing the right thing. And why do I even bother doing the right thing when people over here are doing the wrong thing and they're getting away with it? And wah, 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 and it's like, okay. I usually take, what was that, like 20 or 30 seconds? That's the max I think I can get listened to of my own whining. So then so as soon as, that's me bringing the problem up to the surface so I can deal with it. So when I do my whining, it's to get all that stuff out so I can see the problem. And it's like, okay, oh, so you feel like a victim and you're doing the right thing and other people aren't, and it looks like they're winning. So, okay, so why don't you just go do what they're doing then? Because you say you do what you want to do and it's not working for you and you're such a victim, and the people who are doing the wrong thing, they have it all. They're just happy and living life and loving life, and they always get whatever they want and everything's wonderful in their world. That's the picture you're painting. So if everything is wonderful when you do the wrong thing, then why don't you just go do the wrong thing then? Go ahead. Go do the wrong thing, Glenn. Go. Stop whining and go do the wrong thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, see, as soon as I don't resist temptation, I give myself the ability to choose whatever I want. Freedom of choice is paramount in our spiritual work. Don't try to convince yourself to do something right. Give yourself permission to do whatever the hell you want. That's what I always do, because if I don't, I'm going to rebel against myself. And most people will rebel against you. That's actually a really important thing with raising children, which I should probably do a podcast on. We have to give them the freedom of choice. We try to make them do what we want them to do instead of and strip their freedom of choice in the process, and then wonder why they rebel against us. Like, I never did that with my son. I said, you can do whatever you want. You want to go skip school, get in trouble. How am I going to stop you? You can do it. Go ahead, do it. There's going to be consequences, and your life is going to suck. And this is what's going to happen at home. And you're probably going to, get in trouble at school. And then you're going to have a reputation for getting in trouble at school. So then every teacher is going to be on your ass and make your life even more difficult. But hey, it's your choice. If that's what you want to choose, then by all means, go do it. So I always gave him the freedom of choice. And I do the same thing for myself. Glenn, if you want to go to be the bad boy again, go ahead. Go ahead. Nobody's got a gun to your head saying you've got to be spiritual. Don't be spiritual. Throw it all away. Flush it down the toilet. If you don't think it's worth it, flush it. And then all of a sudden, when I give myself that freedom of choice, now all of a sudden, that pity pot isn't like, I'm not all defensive and trying to protect myself and trying to convince myself that I should do the. Now all of a sudden it's an even playing field, and I can do whatever I want. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, wait, well, I don't know that I want to go become the bad boy again. Oh, well, the way you were talking, I thought you were all pissed off and sick of being a spiritual Glenn, and you had your mind made up and you were going to go be bad boy Glenn. That's the way you were talking. So I just assumed. So why don't go ahead? It's like, well, wait a minute. Let me think about this for a minute. Oh, you're not so sure anymore. Okay. All right. Then think about it. Whatever, And this is in one of these conversations was when I realized, I was like, okay, so I can go back to living dysfunctionally if I choose. So when I first contemplated that, I was like, okay, then what does that look like? And of course, at first my mind was like, oh man, I mean, if you started manipulating with the stuff that you have in your brain now, oh my God, you could tear this place apart. You could get whatever you wanted in so many different areas. Oh, man. But as soon as I started thinking that type of stuff, along with that came that I needed to, if I was going to be a person who behaved in the ways of manipulation and lying and stealing and all the stuff that I used to do, then along with that, comes me. Like I have to live in that body of one who does that, right? One of the things that I enjoy very much in my life is being me. I like walking around the way I interact with life. I like interacting with life when I'm able to set boundaries and I'm not other people's victims, and I take responsibility for my life and I create what I want in my life and all this stuff. Like, I like that. I like me. I like how I like the fact that I'm honest. I like a lot of traits about me and about the way that I live. So therefore, I have large amounts of self-love and self-respect that come with that. So I get to walk around in a body for those of you listening, I just did the robot. That happened. Check out the video. So I get to walk around in that body. The body of somebody who respects themselves and loves themselves and enjoys the way that they interact with life and is proud of the way they interact with life. I get to walk around in that body. And when I was debating going back to this old lifestyle, I had a flash of, it happens very quickly in your mind. So I was like, okay, so I can do whatever I want and manipulate and get things that I want and stuff. And just as oh my God, I can almost feel it now just talking about it. I can feel it now. Whew, I don't like that energy. But I got to finish my point. So I had this flash, just like I kind of did there, but it was even deeper, of how I felt when I was living dysfunctionally, how I felt about myself. And I wasn't fully conscious of it back when I was unconscious. But I'm conscious now. And so now I can compare how I feel about myself now compared to how I used to feel about myself for the first 35 years. And I went, oh my God. Oh my God. I was like, no, I'm not going back to feeling like that about myself. Absolutely not. I would never choose that again. I would never do it. In fact, I would never. And then the flash came like, oh, this was a family court situation. So I was like, oh, the other side walks around feeling like that. Even if they don't fully know it, they're walking around with all that hatred and self-loathing and all that stuff inside of them. Like, oh my God. And then I instantly felt bad for them. And I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I wouldn't, and that, so as I was doing this, it gave me clarity on how to handle my situation, because there was no way I was going back. And at the same time, I gained clarity on why there's like a saying that the punishment is built into the crime, or the punishment is built into the sin, or whatever, and I really understood what that was about. Nobody gets away with anything ever, because it's built right in. If you were walking around treating other people like crap, or lying, or stealing, cheating, whatever, like you're walking around with the vibrations of those things within you. You can't escape that. Like, that's a horrible existence. That, and if you're doing some of that stuff and you're blocking it out because you're unconscious and you're stuffing it, well, good luck. I mean, it's you have to you have to live right to feel right. So it's you can't hide from yourself, so you're going to have to change this type of behavior at some point. So, that was when I really understood nobody's getting away with anything. Like, they're actually walking around experiencing life through the veil of misery and a lack of self-love and self-loathing and all this stuff. Like, they're walking around experiencing life through that, and it's tainting everything. They can't love fully. They can't laugh fully. Like, all of it is just tainted because of this. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So, so this is where I really understood, and just Jen just said, nobody's getting away with anything. I really needed to hear that. And just to kind of finish that point before I get back more on topic, that nobody gets away with anything. And it works in the short term to some degree. It works perfectly and eternally in the way that I just said it, but also in the long term. When I woke up, I didn't really, I had some teachers like Tolle and Michael Bernard Beckwith and Don Miguel Ruiz and Michael Singer that helped me dramatically understand the concepts that I had awoken to and find terminology to speak it and teach it and all this stuff. But I didn't have somebody in my daily life that really knew this stuff, that could give me advice or make me feel better about what I was doing. So most of the time I was doing it myself, that aspect of it. And I didn't know, man. how do you know? You don't know how this stuff's going to play out. So, and a lot of this stuff, what I just had to do it and then see how it played out. And let me tell you through experience, it plays out way better than I even thought. It's just like everything else, man. When you leave it up to spirit, when you leave it up to God, when you leave it up to the universe and you just do the right things, it always turns out better. And my son is 21 now. And, when I moved over here to the DR, he was just blossoming. He had just started like the 6 months to a year before. He had just started and was really hitting his stride right when I moved. And then moving was perfect timing. And he's in full blossom now. I mean, this kid blows my mind at how functional. Like the other day, I was talking to him and I'm like, you have to be one of the most grounded, effective, adulting 21-year-olds on the freaking planet. I mean, how he does things is just mind-boggling to me, and I'm the one that taught him it. And it's still mind-boggling, but he has learned to work through all this stuff, and that's I just half the time I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to lean into love and hope for the best. I'm just going to live through spiritual principles. And even if it looks like I'm losing, or intellectually, I think I will lose if I don't resist against the other side or fight back or whatever, I just have to ride this spiritual train and see where it gets me. Because all I know is that if I'm not on a spiritual train, it's a complete cluster. It's really bad that way. So this is the only other option that I can see. So I'm just going to ride it. And I'm telling you, it works out even better than we planned, in my own life as well as in my son's. So getting back to the self-talk, this is we have to, most times that's what it comes down to. Are we going to live by spiritual principles or are we not? And giving ourselves a freedom of choice. Don't try to talk yourself into living by spiritual principles. If you want to go run into a wall for some strange reason, maybe you should. I don't know, man. I mean, as soon as I really held myself accountable and I was taking responsibility for my actions and I gave myself the choice, I never even came close to taking a hard left. Never. Because as soon as I gave myself the freedom of choice, why would I choose that? It never looked even slightly entertaining to me. As soon as I get off the pity pot, which is what these talks do, So kind of, to be honest with you, I think that, that was a lot of it. I definitely want to touch on the reframing of things, because that is very important. So I'm going to lean into that now. If you guys have any questions about what I just said, any dynamic of it or whatever, just post it in the comments. But so I'll go into reframing. So I basically do the same thing when I'm reframing. So I got to think of a real life example here, especially when I'm alone. Like when I'm vibing, when I'm with somebody one-on-one or in a group, like I can vibe off the energy so much that I can come up with hypotheticals and go all kinds of places. When I'm doing these recordings and I'm alone in a room, I can't quite feed off the energy the same. So I have to kind of it's even more important for me to use real life examples, because sometimes I get lost with the non-real life ones. But like, so one of the times in recent history that I got like really freaking mad was child support, when the child support was ending. Now, just a brief recap. when I moved up from Rhode Island, from Florida to Rhode Island to be with my son when he was around 3-ish, like I had been paying child support and I was continuing to pay child support. So I knew that my ex and I were incapable of really holding much of a conversation. We had a few here and there, but for the most part, it was going to be a problem. So what I did is I was like, I'm going to pay child support through the child support system right off the bat, because otherwise I'm going to get accused of things and money's going to get lost and all that stuff. I want to go through the court system. So I set that up, and right off the bat, they told me, well, what you need to do is we can't set you up on a child support schedule. Like, and we cannot set a court date so you can get on a child support schedule. Like you can't do that, basically. And I'm like, what? Like, they're like, well, she could do it. She could take you to court to pay child support, but you can't go to court to pay child support. I'm like, I can't go in and and say I would like to pay the court for my child. They're like, no, you have to not pay, and then we have to threaten you over and over to take your driver's license and stuff, and then you'll be summoned to court, and then you can go and get your court order put in. Like, whatever. That was how it started. So, and it went downhill from there. So it was like I got, over the years, until my son was 12 when he moved in with me, he like I got accused of many things that were all their screw ups, and threatened and taken to court when I didn't do anything wrong. And my ex pulled some stuff with that, and it was not fun. It was better than if I didn't have a court order, I'll tell you that. But there were some issues, and I always got attacked viciously by the court system. Then when the roles were flipped and my ex was supposed to be paying child support, all kinds of stuff happened. I mean, day one, she owed child support, and they wiped the slate clean. Like, day one. Like, he moved in with me day one, and then by the time everything was like kind of more formalized a few months later, there was owed child support that was in place that she never paid, and they wiped that right off the books. First move, before we even started, they said, well, you don't have to pay that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is how it starts? And it continued on like that. She got caught defrauding the child support system, I believe, twice. They never went after her for it. So between the ages of 12 and 18, it was not fun there. There were several problems, and of her not paying and them never doing anything. So right at the end, it was like she was not paying the last 2 or 3, and she says, so I call up child support, and I was like, I sat down with myself beforehand, and I said, should I make a big deal out of this or no? Like, should I, it's the last 2 or 3 payments. Should I just say the heck with it and be glad that it's over? And I sat down and I felt with it, and it was like, no, Glenn, like you need to stand up for yourself with this one, or else it's not going to sit right. So I was like, all right, I'll stand up for myself. So I went and I called this guy that I've been dealing with and at the child support office, and he was just making excuses and not doing his job. And, finally he was like, finally I got so pissed off, and he's like, yeah, you can send me an email with all your concerns and stuff, and, I'll look into it and get back to you. And I'm thinking, right then I hit my point. And this is probably why I got the nudge to stand up for myself. It wasn't for the money. It was so I could go through this experience. And I lost my flipping mind. I had lost my mind over 18 years of BS through the court systems. I lost my, I lost, I lost my mind. I mean, talk about F-bombs. I unleashed on this guy. 18 years of frustration, I unleashed on this guy and told him exactly what I thought about him, the court system, the child support system, and everything else, with an F-bomb every other word. And I hung up and I was pacing around my house, swearing. And I was like, after a few minutes, I'm like, okay, Glenn, do you want to stay angry? And I was like, yes. It's like, okay. So I just paced for another 5 or 10 minutes, swearing, worked off some of that energy. And then finally it was like, Glenn, do you still want to be pissed off? And I was like, yes, not really. I was like, well, do you? No, I don't want to be angry. Okay, well, you're angry, and this is a red flag that I use. If I'm angry, that means there's something wrong with me. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with the world, because that means I'm a victim of the world, and that's not true. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with somebody else. It means that there's something wrong with the way that I'm looking at it. It's all perspective, always. There is never anything wrong with life. It's been going on for billions of years without my help, and it doesn't need Glenn. So there's nothing wrong with life. And nobody in this world is powerful enough to control me and make me a victim. So there's nothing wrong with everybody else. I mean, they might be doing stuff wrong. They might be in the wrong. But the reason I'm upset is because of the way that I'm looking at it. This is how I take full responsibility for my life. So I knew that if I was angry, there must be something wrong with the way that I was looking at things. So I decided to, once I calmed down, to reframe it. So the way I reframed it was like, okay, what's your problem? Well, I already described that. I'm a victim of the court system. It's slanted towards women, blah, 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 and 13 other thousand things that I was all pissed off about over the last 18 years. Okay, so what's another way to look at it? And this guy's out to get me, and he never goes after my ex. So either he's on her side, or he just on all women's side, or whatever. I don't even remember that's a good sign, right? I don't even remember like why I was so angry or what my victim mentality was at that time, but I was in it. So I looked at it and I said, okay, what's another way to look at this? It's like, okay, another way to look at this. Maybe hypothetically, maybe this guy just works as a child support caseworker for the state of Rhode Island, and he hates his job. And I mean, now this, part of what I'm saying here is probably not a stretch if you had some conversations with this guy, especially if you know people. He never had any energy. Some people are calm, so maybe he was a very, very calm type, but he never had any energy. He never seemed like there was no spark in this guy, So it's like, what's more likely? He's out to get Glenn, who he's never met personally, or that maybe he just is a caseworker at a tough job. He probably doesn't like his job. He probably, quite honestly, doesn't really like his life, just because 75% of the people on the planet don't. So he's probably one of those. There's a good chance of that. And maybe he's just waiting to die or retire. And it's really not about me. He just wants to get me off the phone because I'm annoyed. And this guy has to listen to deadbeat dads lie to him all the time. And he doesn't know that maybe I'm one of the few guys that aren't a deadbeat dad, and he's just used to reacting that way to dealing with all the deadbeat dads that he has to, and all the other people complaining and yelling at him on a daily basis. Maybe he's just exhausted and he wants to get me off the phone so he can move on with his day and or his life. That sounds more realistic than he's out to get Glenn. for no apparent reason. So this is how I reframed it. And now all of a sudden I'm not his victim. I'm not the child support court's victim. And now it's just like, it just is, man. It's got nothing to do with me. It just is. Let it go. Then I was able to let it go. So this is how I frame things. You know, you have to get off the pity pot. Faith is looking at me. Hang on, I'm going to flip a light. There. Yeah, that's better. So, yeah, so this is how I reframe things. If you look at the energy of it, it's all, do I want to be a victim or do I not? You know, so as far as reframing things, I'm going to take it a step deeper. Like this self-talk, you can do this with just about everything. So the way we live our lives is based on belief systems, which I won't go too in depth with, but hopefully you guys are familiar with this stuff because it's important. We live that we live from our belief systems. Most of them are unconscious. Most of them are set between the ages of 4 and 8, and or from somewhat traumatic events that happen throughout our lives. We lock into an unconscious belief system. That belief system was either developed by somebody that was, like I said, 4 to 8 years old. So they didn't have a lot of experience, namely us. They didn't have a lot of experience with life, or it was set in place at a later time in life when we're feeling like a victim most often in a traumatic situation, and it was imprinted. So it was either developed somewhat consciously by a 4 to 8 year old, or it was developed unconsciously by an older person. Either way, it's not the best reasoning. Okay. So how we reframe, and this is how we live our lives, from those belief systems. Like just about anything, if you're having trouble in just about any area of your life, it can be traced back to a belief system that was set in place. Sometimes they're specific, like sometimes they're specific, like a father leaves, right? Let's say your father leaves at the ages of between 4 and 8, and then all of a sudden you implant that with the only logic that you can come up with at that time, that my father doesn't love me, and you can't trust men because they'll say they're going to love you and they'll leave. So you have an abandonment issue, right? So that gets imprinted. Now, the rest of your life is functioning from that in probably many different areas. So you have to go in there and change that belief system. Otherwise, it's going to continue until the day you die, because we live mostly unconsciously. We react to situations. You know, you get into an argument with somebody you're dating, and you don't even know how the hell the argument got into. Or why you took that route. Yeah, that's because it was guided by your deep-seated belief system from a very early age. So we have to go in there when we're seeing our behaviors dysfunctional. That's a manifestation of a belief system. It's coming up to the surface so we can see it, so we can change it. You know, whenever something's going wrong in your life, that's a symptom. It's not the problem. So you go down and you see the belief system, then you shift that. And a lot of times when you shift a belief system, things that were attached to it that you didn't even know shift as well, which is wonderful. So when you're going into these belief systems, I'll see if I can do one with the abandonment thing, since I brought that up. So if you have a abandonment one and you go, okay, like, why do I end relationships when people start getting close to me? Well, because I don't feel safe. Okay. So why don't you feel safe? Well, because I don't know if they're going to leave. Okay. Why don't you know if they're going to leave? Well, because they could. Well, why? Why do you think that they could? Well, because it's happened. Oh, okay. Well, when has it happened? Well, it happened when I was a kid. Oh, okay. Well, what happened when you were a kid? Well, my father left. Okay. All right. So now that you're older, did your father leave because he didn't love you? Well, no. And if you think the answer is yes, then you got some work to do there. But but a lot of times, I'm just using this as an example. When you start asking yourself these questions and going deeper and deeper and deeper, this is how you reframe belief systems. So you go in there and you're like, well, so did he not love you? Well, no, we reconciled our relationship in my 30s, and I'm in my 40s or 50s or something, or so no, I found out that he actually does love me or something, whatever. If that's healed, like I said, if it's not, you need to go heal it. But so you look at that and you go, oh, okay, so it's not true. So your belief system that he left because he doesn't love you, that's not true. Well, no, I guess it's not. See, oftentimes that's where we get to. We get to that question, is it true? Is that true? Well, from an adult thinking conscious perspective, because these belief systems were set in place by a little child or somebody in the middle of a trauma. So there's not much thinking around it. As adults, we get to go into these belief systems, revisit them, and change them, because a belief system is just an agreement. When we were 6, we decided to agree to that because it was the only thing that made sense at that time from that perspective. So we agreed to believe that that was the truth. But when we get older, we can go back at these and we go, is that true? And dissect it. Like, oh, well, no, it's not true. He does love me. Oh, okay. So, and there was nothing you could do. So you felt helpless and you felt like you didn't have your father in his life and you couldn't go on anymore. Right. So was that true? Were you helpless? Could you not go on with your life anymore? Well, no, that's not true. I did go on with my life, and I've accomplished many things in my life, even without him. Oh, okay. So it hurt, but you were able to move on with your life. So you can move on with your life. Do you see how this starts showing you what you're really afraid of and how these things control your behavior? This is what good self-talk does. Going down and asking, you just keep asking yourself, how, why, until you get down to something. Then you can be like, is that true? Or not even. Sometimes it's not even, is that true? Sometimes it is true. So you go, okay, would I like to continue believing that? Does that serve me? Does that perspective serve me? And then it starts looking very similar to the example I just gave when I reframed the child support dude. So like everything is perspective. Like I said, there is no truth. It's just whichever way you want to think. I don't know if this guy, I really doubt that this child support guy had it out for me. But what if he did? Who cares? What empowers me? Like, we're 99% of the time, we're not going to know the truth anyway. So why don't we just choose a truth that serves us, number one. And number two, once you choose a truth that serves you and you compare it to the truth of the negative way that didn't serve you, what you're going to see is that the negative way you were looking at it is less truthful than the positive way of looking at it. If you look at it honestly, it is much less likely that the truth is negative than it is positive. You are closer to the truth when you are not on the pity pot, when you are not a victim, when you find out a way to empower yourself and look at something so it serves you and moves you forward. When you find that, the empowerment way, and then compare it to the negative way you used to look at it, as far as which one's closer to the truth, hypothetically, because we're probably never going to know exactly, you will find that the positive way is closer to the truth. Just like the child support guy. Is it more likely that he is out to get me for no apparent reason, or that he's just some dude working a tough job that's freaking exhausted and just wants to get me off the phone and is tired? It's much more likely that he's just tired and has a tough job. This is what I mean. But we have to disconnect from the victim mentality before we can see that. We have to play this game. We have to come up with the hypothetical secondary story before we can actually see that, because until then we think we're looking at it as the truth. This is how, sometimes I choose to get into debates because sometimes I like to. That's why. But if I don't feel like getting into a debate, it's really easy to figure out who to talk to and who not to talk to, because people will defend their right to be miserable like you read about. And as soon as somebody starts doing that, it's like, okay, of course not my clients. It's my job to call them on it. But anybody else, if somebody is, if I go, well, maybe there's another way to look at it. No, there's not. I'm freaking right. And it's like, you see very clearly, like, this is probably going to be a waste of my breath. All right. Yeah. Look at it the way you choose, man. It's your life. I just drop it and move on because they got that wall up and I ain't going to break through it. Well, why don't you look at it like this? Shut up, Glenn. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. It kind of feels, I'm getting that completion feeling. So hopefully I touched on the, really getting to brass taxes and getting it down to two choices. And a lot of times that choice is, do I want to live spiritually or do I not want to live spiritually? And, I'll kind of throw this out there. I'll give you a little hint to the truth. Like, if you're living spiritually, you're good luck going back to the other way, man. You already saw behind the curtain. The Wizard of Oz is just a man. So you're not going to, you can't unlearn what you've learned, so you're always going to lean into you're always going to leave into the spiritual end of things. But it's basically two choices, and get yourself there, and don't, but blah, blah, blah stuff. Really hold yourself accountable, and then and with the reframing, keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and then reframe. Let's see. You're very welcome, Carl and Tina. Thank you. And I just want to check with Jen. She had said something here. Wanted to hear your thoughts on how gratitude can help with the self-talk. Maybe it's in the same vein as reframing. Yes. And that, honestly, I'm going to answer this in a second, but I just kind of want to say, I think this touches a little bit on the self-talk that in the beginning, where I was saying, like, this isn't that type of self-talk, so the talking, being nice to yourself. And that's a different kind of self-talk that is very helpful and beneficial. But that being said, I am going to try to touch on this and just to see what comes up. How gratitude can help with the self-talk. So what I'm getting is that you don't really need the gratitude in this type of self-talk the way that I'm talking about. I don't think it really plays a part. Like I said, in the other type of self-talk, yes, how you treat yourself, how you act about yourself, non-judgment towards yourself, being grateful plays a huge part in that aspect. And maybe I should do a podcast on that. But this self-talk, I don't think really the gratitude really plays that part, because the reason I say that is because when I was kind of tuning into that to see what I would get, what I was getting was I kind of flashed to that woodshed conversation that I was having right at the crux where it was going like, okay, it's not fair and they're doing the other thing and I'm a victim. Like, if I bring gratitude in there, it feels like I'm blowing sunshine up my ass. It feels like I'm just trying to BS myself into doing the right thing because it's all warm and fuzzy and I'm a good person and all that crap. Like there's a place for that. But in these conversations, I don't think that there really is a place for it because, like I said, we don't try to talk yourself into doing anything. Don't. Yeah. And I think that that's what gratitude would do in this situation, in this particular situation. Gratitude is foundational and amazing and one of the best things there is. But in this particular situation, I don't think it really, I think it's a completely different energy that we don't really need. Because right here, I'm specifically giving myself, I'm not trying to talk myself into doing something because it's the right thing. Like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm not making the other side look good and making the other side look bad. I'm going, no, Glenn, you get to do whatever you want. Your life, your freedom. You choose. Choose it. You want to go be a dysfunctional meathead? Go. Go ahead. Fine. Nobody's got a gun to your head. You get to choose whatever you want. Okay. But then you look at the other way, and the other way, like, you don't have to beef it up with gratitude. It's like comparing heaven and hell, quite honestly. Like when you're comparing heaven and hell, you don't have to have a conversation like, well, geez, heaven has all those puffy clouds and that's really nice. And it'd be so nice to see my family. Oh, and my puppy, that puppy that I lost when I was a kid. Ooh, that would make me feel good. Oh, I'd be very grateful for that. Like, you don't have to build up heaven, right? So that's why. That's why. That was a really good question. I like that. So thank you for asking that, Jen, because it got me to go somewhere that I didn't know I was going to go. And I don't quite honestly think I've ever had clarity on that specific aspect before. So that was helpful for me and hopefully others. So yeah, you don't have to build up heaven when you're comparing it to hell. Yeah, it's all about the choice. It's your freedom of choice. And when you give yourself that freedom, what choice you're going to make becomes obvious. Sometimes we can choose to be on the pity pot. How long do you want to be on the pity pot? Exactly. Yeah. And that's, I gave that example with my little child support scenario. This is one of the reasons why I use these examples, is because I want to give a real life example, and it gives more examples than we realize it's giving, So like when I was pacing around swearing, I knew what I was doing. I was giving myself the right to express anger and be on the pity pot. And I checked in. Do you want to stay here? Yes. Okay. Well, stay there. Far be it for me to get in your way. I know you're a psycho. So, so I did. And then 5 minutes later, do you really want to stay like this? Yes. Well, no. Okay. And then I chose to get off the pity pot, but I needed to release some of that anger before I tried to get off the pity pot. So yeah, everything is about conscious choice. So I'm going to end with this. Sometimes I'll even take a day where I know that I'm off. Like if I know I'm off, I always go in and be like, geez, Glenn, why are you off? Do you need to feel something? Do you need to reframe something? Do you need to connect to your source a little bit better? Spend a little time in meditation? And I'll do those things. And most of the time I'm fine and everything's cool. Every once in a while, it doesn't work. And sometimes I feel like going deeper and really doing deep work until I get out. And sometimes I just go, you know what? I'm going to sit on a pity pot all freaking day. Any ice cream? Well, not ice cream up here. I don't get ice cream up here much. Eat sweets. I do have sweets. And distract myself with some Netflix. That's what I'm going to do. But it's a conscious choice. I choose to do it. I don't do it because I think I have to. I don't wake up 4 days later and realize I woke up I missed 4 days. Like, I consciously choose. I'm not going to do what it takes to get out of here. So, and if it's a conscious choice, that's actually okay. We can consciously choose to stay upset sometimes, because then we're not a victim. We're consciously choosing it. And we're more likely to get out of it because it's not somebody else's fault. So you can, if you're consciously choosing to be on the pity pot, how long can you really stay there? Because you're choosing it. It's your choice. So you're not going to stay there that long. It doesn't feel good. Who would choose to not feel good for a long period of time? Nobody. So when it's your conscious choice, you're not going to stay on there that long, So there. Oh, this is the first time you heard pity pot? Wow. Wow, that's a oldie but a goodie. I think I heard that my entire life growing up. Maybe it started in the Northeast in the 70s. Anyway, cool. Thank you for participating. Of course, Jen, but all of you guys. I appreciate it. It made the show that much better. So thank you. And I will wrap it up for now. Let's see. And yeah, I guess I'll do it. So be harsh, firm, but loving with yourself. All right. Thanks, guys.
Looking for more? Check out over 200 episodes of Life Lessons and Laughter, or click the link in the description of this episode to connect with Glenn directly.